the whole PBS situation.
Oh yeah,
with them being defunded. It's not necessarily hip hop centered, but it is musically centered. Especially those that are fans of like Tiny Desk concerts and things of that nature. How do y'all feel about that situation?
Well, I have some people that at one point I worked for PBS and NPR locally here in Indianapolis, and I realized how much of our funding came through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Yeah.
That was a large chunk that went to WFYI. And it's unfortunate because I see where the component is. There are going to be some people locally that lose their jobs. If there's not someone else who steps up and, fills in the amount of money that came from the CFP. But also I'm thinking about this is all it's one of those things where you just think, OK, whatever, Sesame Street will be fine, whatever. But you got to understand there's a lot of rural places within Indiana where they're not going to receive their news because, there's a lot of repeater stations. There are situations where the local bureaus, a lot of local reporting is not going to happen anymore. So I, even though I haven't been there, I guess it's been like 10 years since I've worked for PBS/NPR, but I just know there's good work being done there. It's about so much more than just Sesame Street. And I know a lot of people were concerned if Tiny Desk was going to be, in danger. Technically, that's still in production. And so it's going to hurt local stations a lot more than it will something like a Tiny Desk or even Sesame Street. There are just going to be places in this country that no longer will have a public broadcasting station. And I think that is sad, because I know people think that PBS and NPR have their biases, and, I don't care what
who doesn't, dude?
Yeah, exactly. That's, and so, but when you just have people, even if you take out the national news, you talk about local reporting, what happens in state houses, and maybe just anything that might be happening in your local city council. That's where you're going to see a reduction in coverage, and I think that's sad. And the things that we find, once again, the things that we are finding money for in this country, and the things that we can't find any money for in this country, I think it's terrible. It's just flat out terrible. We can't put it anywhere else.
We know what it is.
We know exactly what it is.
We know because for some reason people think PBS and NPR is just a liberal machine.
Right.
Yeah. It's not politically affiliated, for one. And it's funny because you would think it's almost like people like to generalize everything politically now, and they take sides based off of that. This wouldn't be happening if Trump wasn't in office.
Of course not.
This is totally driven by politics. And I've seen people think that this is funny because of this is going on, but it's just sad.
Jump in there, Spose.
Oh no, I'm a big PBS fan in general. I watch PBS almost every single night, actually. Like some Ken Burns documentary or whatever stuff is, but no, it's unfortunate. I think you guys summed it up pretty well. That this wouldn't be happening if Trump wasn't in office. And to Jay Moore's point, from what I've read, it's true. That loss of funding for some of those rural stations is a huge dent for them. And it's unfortunate. It's I don't know, man. I'm a big fan. I think it's some of the best programming you can find. You know what I mean? I really do. Like, I think it's good for everybody.
It's unbiased.
Yeah,
unbiased.
I don't know. This guy gets a stick up his butt about something, and
if they were applauding him on these stations, then money would have came out of any and everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
But since they're not. He's wanting to control the news narrative as a whole, which is weird because we talk about fake news and things of that nature.
Yeah.
If the news does not agree directly with you, then it's fake. But you can literally get into it with Charlemagne the God and make a whole statement that's full of bullshit.
I'm glad he has time to do that too.
And that'll be deemed as news. 100%.
Yeah, that's news.
100%. Could you imagine if Obama got into it with this? Did any of the stuff that he does? He went on his little Truth Social, not to get off on the Trump, although
you've been here for a while. Say what you got to say.
We did plenty.
Come on.
We did a lot of it when I was on the show because he was such a topic or whatever. But like telling was I think was it Schumer or somebody, like go to hell on his like Truth Social, his platform that he had to create so that he could, say all the ridiculous things that he says. It's just, it's embarrassing, dude. And it's sad. And we got talking to my wife about it. I was like, man, it's only been 8 months.
Yeah,
8
we're
months.
not even a full year.
There's some change. Yeah.
It's unreal. It feels like it's been 4 years. like it's insane. But it's unfortunate about PBS.
Lon, you got anything to add to this conversation, perhaps? Or?
No, just to echo what you guys said for the most part.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's like Terry mentioned and like everybody else mentioned. This is only happening because, like you can say that NPR is biased.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's like as much bias as it is just anti what that particular party stands for. And we don't have a all truth Republican conservative platform because that's not a thing that's real.
No, it's not.
So like it can't even exist. So like, I don't know. It's just like we're getting farther and farther skewed to the side of like, this is fake, like it's fake news. It's not real. No, it's literally not. It's just information.
Gotcha.
Well, I was very much on the front lines of the fundraising efforts for, our local PBS and NPR station here in the city of Indianapolis. And I tell you what, there was so much misinformation as far as what
happens every day.
We did. I remember one time, I was speaking with a donor or a potential donor, if you will. And they were just like, oh, you guys are just, so biased. And, because I'm trying to get to the money and I'm trying to maintain the lead, if you will, contact. And I said, well, you know what? What if I call you in 2 weeks and, if you hear something that is so outrageous that, you feel like you can't support us, then I understand and we'll take you off the list. And the person was like, that's fair. And the thing is, like, when I actually talked to them the second time, they were like, you know what? I really hadn't listened. I really hadn't watched. This is based off what I've been told.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there were people out here. There were campaigns. I remember one time I spoke with a potential donor, somebody who, you did have to take off the list because they said, well, we heard, in church. They said that somewhere in the church that they went to that, PBS/NPR, local station, WFYI, whatever, donates money to Planned Parenthood. And I had to explain, I said, ma'am, you got to understand, non-for-profits don't give money to each other.
That part.
Right.
And it was an uphill battle because there were people who honestly didn't even know what the content was. They had been told what the content was and they felt it was something to be against. What's crazy is like on my staff at that time, there were two people who were very Republican, but at the same time, because they knew the actual value of what PBS and NPR brought, they had no problem working as fundraisers.
Right.
Like these are people that, voted for Bush, I know voted for, John McCain, but like they knew what the value of this was. And I think now everything is just so polarizing. It's like, first of all, you're not getting the money that they're not giving to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They're not sending you a part of that. They're just spending it on other things and to make up for tax cuts for the rich and people who can write off airplanes. Like you're still going to be poor and your kids now, there's less free educational programming for them to watch if you live in rural areas. And
it's not going to affect you positively. So
much of these things that happen that seem like, oh, we're sticking it to these people, just like, the people who did not take the Medicaid expansion, during Obamacare, like, those rural areas are the ones where it's mostly very red and, middle to lower middle class, if not poor. Those are the people that were hurt by this.
Yeah.
No, I can dig
and so
it.
it's going to be the same thing as far as education. And I could go on and on. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I know exactly what the numbers are and what the value is, the value proposition is to people across this country. And, we're going to look back on this and be like, wow, we really did that. In 20 years, maybe 10 years, probably 5 years.
I hope things can change. Maybe, I don't know, in 2 to 4. It depends on what happens with this next midterm or whatever that's coming up. So, but it's just ridiculous. Oh, real quick, did you guys know this? When Jay worked at WFYI, he was a manager, and he had a sign in the break room that said "Coffee is for closers."
Yes,
I did not know that.
You watching Boiler Room?
No, that was from Glengarry Glen Ross.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's kind of the same vibe. Like you could tell, Boiler Room was very much influenced by that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
just
No,
thought
I
you
can
guys
dig
should
that.
know
I can
that.
dig
But yeah,
that.
coffee was for closers, man.
That's the kind of manager he was.
Get that
No nonsense.
No
Get that
nonsense.
credit card rate up. You know how we do.
You know, real quick though, to Brad's point about the 2 to 4 years, I watched. There's a very good interview. I'm just gonna throw this out there to whoever sees our Patreon and everything, because I'm not sure where this is gonna land. But you guys ever seen Diary of a CEO? It's like
I don't think
it's
so.
like a podcast. It's a really well done. And he sat down for 2.5 hours with an ex Google executive,
Mhm.
and he's talking about how AI is moving throughout everything and how everything's going to change, and predicts like a dystopia for 12 to 15 years starting in 2027 and what it will end up to be.
Sick.
And
Yeah.
awesome, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, check that video out, because like as we sit here and what we're used to, like another 4 years.
Yeah.
The way things are going, the way everything is moving, how fast everything
Very
is,
fast.
it's going to be a completely different world in like 1 year, and another completely different world in 2 years. And I'd be very curious, like the displacement and the PBS stuff, and how who knows if it even matters.
Yeah.
No,
That's a
not
good
to be
point,
not
man.
to be negative.
No,
I mean
no.
that's real though.
That's a great
like
point.
that's real.
And one of the things, and I'll stop because like
Yeah, we gotta
PBS
get to some music.
because I remember having a conversation with somebody, and they're like, well, why don't you guys just sell commercials? As opposed to looking for donations and grants and everything like that. I said, well, they did try a for-profit PBS model. It was called the Learning Channel. Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was called the Learning Channel, and it showed nature programming, political programming, things that were similar to what was on PBS, but they sold commercial time. This is what happened to the Learning Channel. Eventually, that profit model was not sustainable. So what they did was change the Learning Channel into TLC. And their premiere programming on TLC eventually became Here Comes Honey Boo Boo.
Yeah.
So when you set up a profit model
Yep.
for something that is for the public good, it's always going to turn into something else.
You guys know the word.
Yeah.
You know
Capitalism.
You know the word.
We like when you say it though.
Yeah, capitalism.